If you found $100 on the street, would you pick it up or keep walking? Of course you take the money. So why do you keep picking winners and not betting on them? That's why I go to MyBookie. It's fast, it's easy, and they pay you when you win. Let's face it, guys, where you're betting is just as important as who you're betting on. So do the smart thing this football season. If you're going to bet with MyBookie. Did you know you could bet on games after kickoff? If by the second half it looks like you're going to lose your bet, you can always just take the other side at MyBookie. Join now and MyBookie will double your first deposit. Use promo code Detroit100 to activate the offer. That's promo code DETROIT100. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid.
Fellas, I want to tell you about a product that can improve your performance in the bedroom. And what better way to improve the quality of your life than to please the woman of your dreams? Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. Blue Chew is the fast and easy solution for any man looking to enhance their performance and step up their game. You don't have to be one of those guys that finishes quickly, or you don't have to be one of those guys that, at the end of the day, regrets not having a great sex life. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package, so no in-person doctor's visit, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use our special promo code DETROIT. All you got to do is pay the $5 shipping and handling fee. Again, that's BlueChew.com, promo code Detroit to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the podcast.
And Doc, as you know, this fine episode of Tigers Talk is brought to you by DC Sports at Lakeside Mall in Sterling Heights, your go-to source for authentic sports memorabilia and terrific autograph signing sessions. To find out more, please follow DC Sports Detroit on Twitter at DC Sports Detroit. And also, make sure to check out their terrific website at DetroitCitySports.com.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest and freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun. That is Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles McElroon. John, we are laughing at something because you just found out about why I took a photo of you just a couple of minutes before starting this recording.
Yeah, I naturally assumed you were going to be late. So I showed up for a 3:05 recording at 3:03, and you were actually here. Good for you. I was early, 2 minutes before the recording, but you showed up on time. I'm proud of you. But you're not getting paid today, so why?
You know what? I'm heading out. All right, see ya. See ya, John. Have a good one, man. Good luck with this recording. But good luck to the Tigers the rest of the way. It's going to be troublesome, and they start with the Yankees Tuesday night, 3-game set with the Yanks, then the Orioles at Comerica Park. You and I will both be there Tuesday night, and then I'll be there on Saturday evening for that contest with the O's. So intriguing, 3-game matchup with the Yankees. One of the best teams in all of baseball, best team in the American League this season. Should be fun to watch that and probably see the Tigers get massacred.
You know, when the Yankees come to town, two bad hombres got to show up. Yeah, we were joking in the Lions media room saying, what's the average distance of the home runs going to be? 360? Look, you never know. Maybe the Tigers will compete, but they did over the weekend hit the historic loss mark. 100 losses on the season. You know, Vito, it's interesting. You know, the Tigers go out to Oakland to play a game in Oakland that's considered a home game, and they lose that contest, but then eventually go out and defeat the Oakland Athletics there in the doubleheader. But all in all, disappointing end to the season in 2019, but what can you say? It's a 100-loss team. You're evaluating the young talent. We're going along here. We are looking at a couple of the storylines in terms of Jordan Zimmerman. I know that people are paying attention that, okay, maybe he is now healthy and can contribute. Maybe not consistently as a starter, but all is not exactly lost in terms of storylines. And even though the team is, kind of coming to the end of the season to a slow, grinding halt, there are some things to talk about. What do you make of the last week for the Detroit Tigers?
Well, Matthew Boyd did not allow a home run in his start against the Royals last week, and that was something big because he's been allowing a ton of home runs this season, hasn't he? And that was good to see out of him, a quality start, and only against KC, so you take it with a grain of salt, perhaps. And Zimmerman, up to his most recent outing, until that recent outing over the weekend against the A's, was doing very well, throwing quality innings. Wasn't his most effective over the weekend in Oakland. So that wasn't great to see out of Jay Zim, a guy who has shown some effectiveness, once again, outside of that most recent outing of his against Oakland. And, not to exude a ton of negativity, but I got to again, because look at these young guys. Willi Castro and Jake Rogers, not hitting yet. Willi Castro, a $189, 0 home runs, worth negative .5 WAR. That's not good. Then you look at Jake Rogers in his stats right now, and he's batting 102, even worse WAR, negative .6. Now, he has hit some home runs, but he did a lot of that early on in his stint with the Tigers. And he can throw out runners, great arm, all of that he has going for himself behind the plate. But Rogers and Castro continue to struggle at the plate, John. And that is not great to see out of these two Tigers youngsters.
Second half of the podcast, we'll talk about it. Maybe they can be traded by the future general manager and president of the team. I can't believe that a general manager and president, with the success that this guy had out there in Boston, was fired not that long after winning the World Series. I can't wait to talk about it because it's an interesting debate and one in which there's a lot of people on both sides, I think, equally in terms of the debate. Obviously, you heard the news. Dave Dombrowski was fired unceremoniously from the Boston Red Sox. Many people think potentially he could land a job in Major League Baseball in the front office there, potentially doing some work for Major League Baseball as an executive, but I'm definitely curious to get your sense of it in the second half of the podcast. But by and large, Vito, really, it's so interesting that a lot of the Tigers just don't hit for whatever reason, and then you just look at Nick Castellanos, who caught fire. What is it? Do you think potentially that it's not talent-based, that it's not coaching-based, that really at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you on our fifth recording of a day, and you're just like, let's just get it over with, let's just do it and spit it out. And then when you're reinvigorated and you show up to a mega studio and you're like, wow, I'm really into it, and you just bring your A game. Is it really that? Is it something where really the attitude is just really down because of the losing, and that just at the end of the day, you show up to the ballpark, you're just swinging. There's no plate discipline. You don't care anymore, and you're just going to show up there, take your hacks, and whatever happens, happens. And you kind of get that sense, right? In the last week, in observing some of the at-bats, now, obviously, I'm not going to pay attention to the intricacies, but I kind of just feel like the athletes out there are just swinging away. They're not really, working counts deep, trying to get in and out of ball games. I mean, I think on Sunday, they started a game at 4, and by 6:15, they were done. So you look at it and you go, I just think that everybody there is just kind of going through the motions, and you hate to say that for professionally paid athletes, but at the end of the day, it's just a bad situation, a bunch of colleagues and workers that just don't want to be there.
Well, it's like me at the podcast network going through the motions since I last got paid 365 days ago. Something like that. Not that bad over here at the podcast network, but you can boo me all you want. I'm going through the motions, and these guys are as well. But what is pathetic is that you see a guy like Castellanos, who was all right, and down the stretch before he got traded to the Cubs, really he was effective at the plate, was hitting for much more extra base power and whatnot. So that was good to see out of him before he was dealt. But for a large portion of his campaign this year with the Tigers, he was showing a lack of plate discipline, a lack of effort game to game and night to night. And that's not good to see out of a veteran leader, go-to guy in your clubhouse and in the middle of your lineup. So that was putrid. That was pitiful. And Castellanos displayed a lot of that ineptitude for a long while with the Tigers this season because he was going through the motions, wasn't giving his full effort. And he should have been. So as much as I get it when your team is struggling and way out of contention that you're going to go a bit through the motions, but for as long as Castellanos seemingly went through the motions, that was pitiful and uncalled for.
Tough stuff all the way around. And then, obviously, hearing the comments from Nick Castellanos where, he even mentioned the fans. He said that in Chicago, when there's a blowout happening, even if the Cubs are down by 8 or 9 runs, all the fans are into it. And he kind of took a little bit of a backhanded slap at Detroit fans. He's like, playing at Detroit was pretty much playing in front of an empty ballpark. And I can't blame the fans, Vito, for staying away by and large this season, right? Because of the fact that it's a full-blown rebuild. It's tough to cover. I mean, we're there quite a bit. And you find yourself in the 4th inning. It's a 6-2 game. Miggy swinging at the first pitch and in key moments not delivering. And, obviously, they just recently released Ryan Carpenter. Every single time he went up there, we were like, man, Vito, every time we're here covering a game, it's an appearance by Ryan Carpenter, and we all would just be like, dude's going to get shelled tonight. And you just were like, man, every 5th day covering the Detroit Tigers, and he would go out there. You just look at that situation by and large, it's tough all the way around. And the other thing I mentioned to a media member was, when they say 162 games is long, it's long. It's tough, especially for media, fans, the coaches. It's got to be tough all the way around to bring it. I know that they're paid athletes, and I know that they're putting a lot on tape, but at the end of the day, Vito, what do they really got to play for? What is it that's motivating these guys? I mean, yeah, there's individual moments where guys hit home runs, and there's games mixed into a bunch of losses, but by and large, this season can't end fast enough.
It's a heck of a long season when you've already lost 100 games. You're 42-100. Worst team in all of baseball. And you have to keep playing until the end of September.
Bad.
Yeah, epically bad. Tigers on pace for, 110? 112 losses? Something like that at this point? That's not good. And they haven't displayed a quality brand of baseball all season long. And that's why some guys now have come under fire, such as Ron Gardenhire. More and more, a guy that might not want to return next season.
Well, Vito, and looking at that, I think he'll be back. I actually think he'll get another year. I think that they'll extend Ron Gardenhire because, by and large, it's not his fault. Everybody reasonably that's paying attention to it thinks that he hasn't been given that much talent, that even the best managers, even Joe Torre, couldn't come in here and get that much more out of these guys. But I would say this, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts in regards to the work that Ron Gardenhire has done. I do think that, potentially speaking, Lloyd McClendon probably should move on. And I think, by and large, you have to evaluate what's going on in the analytics department in terms of who they're targeting in free agents, how they're utilizing the numbers in terms of advancing the skills of the athletes that they have, because I don't think a lot of people in terms of the coaches have done really a stellar job to say, yeah, we must absolutely keep this guy. I mean, would you be upset if Dave Clark lost his job? No. I mean, there's been plenty of times where he's waved guys home and you're like, oh my God, this guy's out by like 40 feet. So I just think that a major shakeup should happen. Ron Gardenhire should bring in some younger assistants, a little bit more vibrant attitude in that clubhouse, because what's going on now just really hasn't worked collectively. And I think when they do sit back and evaluate, there's going to be some changes, maybe some additions to the analytics department, because they got to spice things up. You can't return in 2020 with the same exact staff that you had, because I don't think you can say fairly that a lot of these guys got a lot better. They just came with what they had, and a lot of guys got worse.
That's the problem. These guys should be improving. Now, you did bring up, what do these players have to play for? Well, roster spots, for many of the young guys at least. But when you're a guy such as Gordon Beckham or Jordan Zimmerman or Miguel Cabrera, now Miguel and Jordan Zimmerman, because of their contracts, respectively, will be brought back for next season. Beckham won't be brought back, but Beckham already knows he's not going to be brought back, right? I mean, so what is he playing for? Cabrera and Zimmerman already know automatically they have roster spots for the 2020 campaign. So what do they have to play for? But guys like Willi and Harold Castro and Jake Rogers, they have something to play for. Duel Lugo has something to play for. Those guys, respectively, have something to play for the rest of this month going into the offseason. So those guys better show up and give it their all every single AB.
Vito, did you check Instagram? Jacoby Jones just posted that he wants out. He's like, I want out of this mess.
Many guys probably do behind the scenes, honestly. You have to believe that is true.
Could you imagine if Jacoby Jones taped Ron Gardenhire in a conversation that they had and did like this whole thing that Antonio Brown did and just try to orchestrate his way out? He's like, okay, I got to call the same guy Antonio did. Got to get myself out of here. I don't know if I got to tape Al Avila, if I got to tape Ron Gardenhire. Let me get myself out of here. But look, at the end of the day, a lot of people do respect wearing the Old English D, and we joke around about it, but you get a sense that these guys do find some pride in playing baseball, but you also get a sense that this might be their only chance at a job, that around Major League Baseball, if they really were to shop themselves, maybe 2 guys in the entire organization now could be, of the veterans, could be picked up. And
Well, who else is picking up Gordon Beckham?
Right.
I keep harping on him and criticizing him, unfortunately. But who's going to pick him up this offseason coming up? Nobody. He'll be set to retire. He'll be having to retire because nobody else is going to be interested in his services going into the offseason. And you have other guys, too, that we could say are in the same situation right now going into the offseason that, besides the Tigers and maybe the Orioles and the Marlins, nobody's going to want these guys on the open market, John.
Yeah, the Orioles come in. Oh, my God, it's going to be the race for last place. But at the end of the day, my peachy positive note of the week, the Tigers did, this year in 2019, they did win the season series versus the Royals.
Good God. They've done something, John. What a huge positive for the Tigers this season.
Well, the
Wow.
only reason why I know that is that the Tigers' Twitter department let us know that.
Just tweeted it out. They can rest their laurels on that for the 2019 campaign. How sad is that? So they won the season series against the Royals, yet the Royals are 10 games up on the Tigers in the American League Central Division. That's a team with, 52 wins then in the Royals? Or 50-something wins and they have a 10-game lead on the Tigers? That's how bad. That just screams at you, John, how bad the Tigers have been in 2019.
So the Tigers are going to be the basement dwellers of the Central Division.
Easily. No doubt. There's no race. Hey, they don't have to worry about anybody taking their spot in the basement of the American League Central Division.
Dun, da, da, da. Well, we'll crown them. They were who we thought they were.
They deserve the title, don't they? As cellar dwellers in the American League Central. And not just that, John, though. In all of baseball, baby. They're going for the number 1 overall pick. They're going to have that wrapped up. I already do for 2020 now, John, at this point.
I know I still open the papers and read the beat writers, and what they're saying is potentially that it's still not bottom. It's still not rock bottom.
Next year? Could be as bad or worse. I think as bad. And the thing is, I really believe this, John. I'll leave this discussion with this point by me here. That if they lose 100 or more games next season again, Ron Gardenhire, there's no way he can return as Tiger skipper in 2021.
I don't think he'd want to.
I don't think he would either, and he might not even want to return for 2020 at this point with that final season remaining on his contract.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, show love to the sponsor. Second half of the podcast, we got to get into it. I do think that you and I may have differing positions in regards to Dave Dombrowski. You're listening to Tigers Talk on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, another one of our fine sponsors at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network and a longtime sponsor of Tigers Talk is the Detroit Sports Commission. And to find out more about all of the events they are hosting right now and going into the near and long-term future, please follow the Detroit Sports Commission on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And also make sure to check out their terrific website at DetroitSports.org. And John, we're back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, and I believe it's episode 202 of the podcast this week, and we have to harp upon now the sad news, for me at least, that Dave Dombrowski has been let go by the Boston Red Sox after winning the World Series last season. I've got to believe something else happened for him to be let go, and I know the farm system of the Red Sox has been just gutted, okay? So that's the large-scale reason for why Dave Dombrowski was dismissed. But still his ball club, while being 18.5 games out of first place in the American League East division, which is led by the New York Yankees. Still, they're 76-68, and they won the World Series last year. I can keep bringing that up all day long. Every day that ends in day, I can bring up Dave D won a championship in Beantown last season, and you let him go? I mean, come on, man. I got to believe it. In my opinion, he's been done dirty. I don't care how bad that farm system is right now and going into the future. He has been done dirty in my opinion, John.
Well, sometimes, Vito, in working relationships, sometimes even though there is success, there are things that are going well. Obviously, Dave Dombrowski brought a World Series, did indeed tap a young manager to come in Alex Cora, and he was, able to master the egos in that locker room and in the clubhouse, and he was able to bring the Boston Red Sox together to win the World Series. Okay, but at the end of the day, you got to work with the people that are your superiors, and I'm certain that the working relationship became tenuous at times, strenuous in regards to the fact that there's expectations year in and year out for the Red Sox. And by and large, what Dave Dombrowski does is he comes in and he needs that big fat checkbook and he needs it open and he needs some assets in the minor leagues to haul off. And that's what he's a master at. He's a master at evaluating talent, shipping off younger talent for proven veterans. And he just knows, he knows how to tap into not exactly finding the marquee guy, but also finding that role player that can come in and really help a ball club, that glue guy. And so you look at it and you say, you know what? Kudos to Dave Dombrowski for bringing a World Series to Boston. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't long enough. The working relationship just wasn't great enough to sustain a long-term relationship with the Red Sox. But at the end of the day, that ring will still have bling, and he'll still be known as a general manager that brought the Boston Red Sox a World Series. So
he still delivered a ring. He still got that bling bling to show for it. And so he's won a World Series with two different teams in two different leagues with the Marlins back in 97 when Jim Leyland was leading the way as skipper of the Marlins, and last season in 2018 with the Bo Sox. So he did it with two different organizations, teams from two different leagues, John. And you get rid of them. And I believe something else went on behind the scenes, and there was some disputes. And that's why he was let go ultimately. Because as bad as the farm system is looking right now for the Red Sox, right now moving forward, still, you got to give the guy the benefit of the doubt when he brought your franchise a World Series championship just a season ago. And truly less than a season ago right now because the playoffs haven't even started in 2019 as of yet. So I just think he got a raw deal. And maybe I'm a Dave Dombrowski loyalist and apologist, and I'm showcasing my true colors right now being a Dave D apologist, but I know what he did for my hometown, Detroit Tigers, for all those years as Trader D and Dave. He brought the Tigers relevancy for the first time in my lifetime. Remember, once again, you date back to 03, a season which looks very resemblant to this season now, John, and the Tigers lost 119 games in that season. 3 seasons later only, he took the Tigers to the World Series. Think about that. What he achieved, and then what he achieved in winning 4 straight division crowns from 2011 through 2014 with the Tigers. Did a lot of good, and I know there were some negatives. He never built up the bullpen. He gutted the Tigers' farm system, and they truly didn't have a lot of guys that were homegrown quality players on those clubs that went to the World Series in 06 and 2012, and more specifically 2012, and won those 4 straight division championships from 2011 through 2014, more specifically. But still, he did a lot of darn good with this Tigers organization, and the same can't be said about the current man leading the way in the Tigers front office, in Al Avila, who I think once again, I'll reiterate a point I made before this week's commercial break, that if they lose 100 or north of 100 games a season from now, I think Al Avila has to be out of a job, John. And I think Ron Gardenhire, there's no way he will want to return, and I think he would mutually part ways with the Tigers at the end of the 2020 campaign.
I'm all for it, Vito. Look, this is a guy that if you know what he brings to the table and you know what you're looking to do, that's the guy, okay? Actually, the only variable that is tough is nobody thinks that Chris Ilitch's checkbook is open. You got plenty of talent in the minors. If Ilitch is willing to spend a little bit to invest, you really could just repeat history. Back in 2006, what started to happen? There was this rookie that comes up. Maybe you have Casey Mize come up next year. Maybe you just start to have that one rookie that's an impactful player, and then you just have the rest of the guys be used as trade bait. You just got to find that one key free agent that's going to come in, maybe just past his prime, but just has enough left to come in and contribute a la Pudge Rodriguez. You could start the process all over again, and who better than to understand what's in the minor league system than Dave Dombrowski. Now, I get those that are against it, okay? Here are the pros and cons. One of the cons is that, the Yankees were able to have such long success because they were able to have this handful of guys that all came up together in the minor leagues, the core, okay? And that's fine. But at the end of the day, we're not the Yankees, okay? We're the Detroit Tigers. We're not looking for a 5-year run here. We're looking for potentially a 1 or 2 year stretch where we know we can go all in, and then you can rebuild again, okay? At this point in time, if you brought in Dave Dombrowski, he would come in and he would understand, okay, we got Faedo, we got Funkhauser, we got Bo Burrows, we got probably the trade chip in Riley. We could go out there and move a bunch of them. He could move 6 of them. He could trade 6 guys from the minors, and he could probably get 7 guys back that probably are going to have hefty salaries, but could come in, and in 2 years, the Tigers could potentially not only be in the playoffs, but they could compete. That's how fast Dave Dombrowski could work. Where you brought him in, okay, 2020 is going to be an abysmal situation where you try to regroup and put together the first part of the puzzle. 2021, you might, inch up, maybe get back into the division race. 2022, potentially that with a checkbook and who he trades, I'm confident it would work. I'm confident that would it end up being in a World Series? You can't guarantee that because, freak things happen. Maybe you get a week off and a certain injury takes place. But wherever Dave goes, if you give him that opportunity, it works. So I understand the cons, though, is that he would decimate the minor league system and you would not have as many of the arms as you have because Dave likes proven talent. And that's what I like. I like proven talent.
I think a lot of fans do, too,
yeah,
for sure.
Waiting for the minors. I mean, Vito, we've been covering the Tigers now for 2 years, and it feels like we've been covering them for 25 years.
It's been ugly, man.
So it's not upon me to be patient. I want to win now. And I understand those that say, you know what, if you stick with Al, the Tigers could be good for 6 years. They could be. But how much of your money are you willing to bet that that's going to happen? I'm willing to push all in that Dave Dombrowski is going to put together a winning organization. Now, you could say, well, he actually did not bring one here. He damn near put together 2 teams that had a lot of strong chances, and one in 2013 that was really, really close to doing it. So I think in that run, the Tigers could have, if the cards fell a little differently, they could have won 2 World Series from that group. So, look, I'm all about Dave Dombrowski. Bring Dave back and right the ship. But as people have noted and tweeted me via our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, Mike Ilitch, when he fired Dave Dombrowski for all the years of service, for all the great things he did for the organization, he got all of a phone call. So that's pretty much going to leave a sour taste in your mouth where you're having parties where Al and Dave are, hanging out, doing their thing, where Al already knew he had the job. Al knew. If you remember, if you harken back to some podcasts, me and Adam were like, damn, Al did his friend dirty in that he knew they went to galas together knowing where Al knew he was going to shake his hand of his buddy and give him a big high five and a bro hug.
Good to see you, Dave. About to take your job, bud.
Good to take a job. And that's how Al did Dave Dombrowski. So would Dave Dombrowski be willing to come back? It would take probably a hefty amount of money. And I think, as we're talking about it, it sounds like a pipe dream. But Dave Dombrowski, probably the best available executive right now in the entire major leagues.
It's a pipe dream, man. Hell no. All the way. Because Dave Dombrowski already took over an epically bad franchise. When he had his first stint with the Detroit Tigers, he took over what was an epically bad franchise, John, remember. A team that had losing campaigns all the way from 1994 until 2005. And luckily, Mike I spent enough to get him here back then for his first and what will be his only stint with the Tigers. He's not coming back here to deal with this epic disaster. The franchise is in such a disastrous state, I think almost you couldn't pay him enough to come back to Motown for a second stint to lead the front office. So we've just got to accept the fact that we have to deal with Al Avila at least for another season. And once again, to reiterate for a third time now in this week's episode of Tigers Talk, I truly believe if Tigers bottom out a season from now, I think Al Avila is shipped out of town, even though he just got that nice, hefty extension from owner Chris Ilitch.
By and large, how are you reviewing what Al has done? When you look at some of the moves that he's made, obviously the Tigers are drafting in high position. I think Al, in terms of who he's gotten players that can be productive, but I think the part that may really hinder the Tigers and their ability to get out of this funk that they're in is a lot of the trades that he started to make. Justin Verlander, J.D. Martinez, some of the guys that he let go that had high-end talent, you just didn't get a lot back in return. Nick Castellanos. I mean, the tough part is when you look at some of the situations, a lot of prospects and not a lot of ready-made guys that are ready to come up and play big league ball. So it stinks because you're seeing JV hit his stride with Houston, getting no-hitters. You're seeing Nick Castellanos dropping. He's already got more home runs with the Cubs than he had all season with the Tigers. And so you look at that and you go, who's Al Gotten? Nobody of note.
His son? His son was good, and they flipped him and Justin Wilson to the Cubbies for Isaac Paredes. Come on. And Jamer Candelario, the Candyman, and Paredes. Paredes still might be something. Candyman still might be something. I bring up that trade, though, because really, that's the only quality trade that he's made that you can still say at this point has been quality. I mean, you look at that deal of Verlander to the Houston Astros, and you look at what Verlander has done for the Stros, leading them already to a World Series championship, and that was his first season on the job with the Stros. This year, throwing a no-hitter, the third no-hitter of his career, and may very well, and my prediction right now is that he leads them to another World Series championship. He could get 2 rings with another organization, not named the Detroit Tigers. How sad is that? And it's a sad, I think, fact that we have to accept as Tigers fans. And once again, to get back to the point I was trying to make, what he got in return for Verlander? Well, it was Franklin Perez, who's dealt with the injury bug, left and right. A catcher in Jake Rogers, who has hit what now, John? Barely 100 so far this season. Okay? So you got those 2 dudes, big dudes, as your big prize prospects from that deal, along with Daz Cameron, who really hasn't hit at all in AAA Toledo this season. So 3 guys have not hit or performed in their respective roles or have been hurt at the same time. So those guys have amounted to nothing, really, for the Tigers. And that was the biggest guy you had to move to get a quality return of prospects in return. And those guys have realistically amounted once again to nothing. So Avila, it's still relatively hard to evaluate him. But there's many more negatives right now than positives. And the only 2 positives, or large-scale positives, are who he took #1 overall last year, in Casey Mize. Still looks like could be solid, even though he's dealt with the injury bug of late and had to be shut down, by the way, prematurely this season. And Riley Green, getting him #1 overall this season. But when are those guys going to be ready? A guy like Riley Green might not be ready until 2023. Is Avila even going to still be the GM come that time? And Casey Mize now, after dealing with the injury bug for some of this season, John, will he be even ready by midway next season to pitch at the major league level? So you got these question marks aplenty. And even with the 2 biggest positives of Avila's tenure with the Detroit Tigers.
Well, we can agree to disagree. I think Dave would come in here and handle his business. I think it would be a massive upgrade over what the Tigers have, but it's not happening, so it's a pipe dream. I will say this. We're going to cover the Tigers series now versus the Yankees. What are you expecting? Probably 2-3 losses versus the Yankees?
They played 3 games. So, 3 losses? They can get pummeled very easily. But then you play the Orioles over the weekend, and who's going to that? But they could pick up some games there against the O's, I guess, over the weekend, John.
So, maybe a 500 week when we reconvene to record the next episode, they'll be 45 and 103.
Well, they play 4 against the Orioles. So, they actually play Friday through Monday, which is weird, but it's happening. And I don't think many people will be going to the ballpark over the weekend.
Bold prediction. They're going to go 4-3.
Oh, lovely. Who even cares, though? I'm sad, but I got to state that. I know it's bad for me to do so doing this podcast, but
is your dad paying attention still? Is your dad paying attention?
Does, but not as often even. Not even him. And he has gone through a lot of losing campaigns and even a little bit of recent memory. But once again, that stretch from 94 to 05, all losing seasons for the Tigers. And he kept watching, and he bought season tickets like in 97, John. And then he gave up before they got good in 06. So for me as a young guy, I never even had season tickets when they got good finally in 06.
Ask him, which team does he think is worse, this team or the 2003 team? We debated it on previous episodes, but I'm curious to get your dad's take on it. So make sure you ask him, which team does he think has played worse, the 2003 team or this one? All
Those
right?
guys had some hope, though. And you know what? That could be a segment. We could record them. I'll pre-record them before a recording here in studio. And we'll include them as a segment, talking about that. But, hey, really quick, once again, like I said, I think it was last week, those guys actually from 03, those guys ended up playing on the 06 team that won the American League pennant, too.
This team has none of that.
1 or 2 guys. I mean, maybe. I once said Christian Stewart, but I don't know about him at this point. I once said Jamer Candelario. I don't know about him at this point. I mean, Dewell Lugo keeps getting at bats, and he hasn't produced. Ronnie Rodriguez hasn't produced. Jake Rogers hasn't yet. Willi Castro hasn't. Harold Castro has a little bit. But all of these guys, I just named off, and real quickly I did. How many of those guys can you really count upon? Even come 2021. Now, next season, they're going to be on the roster still trying to prove their worth. But come 2021, John, even, who's going to be on the roster as a big-time contributor of those guys that I just mentioned who really comprises their young core right now?
Well, with that said, tough times ahead, but you can always count on the Detroit Sports Podcast, Tigers Talk. Look, it's tough. We all know there's not a lot of great things to talk about, but at the end of the day, the Tigers are in a rebuild. We will find some more interesting storylines, maybe get some guests on to kind of break this all down and to see where we can focus our attention going forward. And yeah, I'd love to hear some of your dad's thoughts and experiences regarding watching the Tigers and really focusing in on comparing how bad this year has been to what other messes he's watched. But for those that don't know, Vito's dad also is a longtime supporter of the Tigers. The Tigers were really bad in the 90s for damn near a decade, up until 2003 when it started to kind of turn around just a little bit. So your dad has a plethora of knowledge. I'm interested to hear what his take is on how bad this season ranks compared to other years.
Does he have more knowledge than me? Are you inferring that, John Macaroon?
Well, if he does a good job, remember this, you could be recording your replacement.
I'm about to say, he might end up taking my place here at the DSP Network.
You can follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you agree or disagree with anything that we've said on this week's recording, feel free, lob us a message. We love talking baseball. We love debating. Thank you to those that did weigh in fact, that were either pro or con Dave Dombrowski, and made for a fun debate late on a Sunday after the Lions game. So that was interesting in that, we were all kind of winding down, and I think it was midnight going into Monday.
It was late.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was actually up. Now, I'll let everybody know. I didn't respond to John's direct message to me about the news.
Right.
I still haven't, and won't, because I don't want to talk to the guy outside of this podcast studio. But we had a great day of watching the Lions, right? Oh, God, that was a terrific game. And then you see this big news regarding my man Dave D getting let go by the Red Sox to end the night.
Thanks, everybody. You've just downloaded episode 202. For all the podcasts that air on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, you can find the podcast via your favorite podcast player, whether it be Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Podbay, anywhere at all, or directly, you can stream the podcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. I look forward to talking to you next week, Vito.
Adios.